One of the things that arty people often talk about is the voice that an artist has in their work. This is one of those terms that is not usually understood by the general public. Simply put, it is the idea that there are special qualities that an artist produces consistently in their work, which makes them recognizable whether in a group show or alone and out of context. It is an important concept for an artist to work toward finding their true voice because they can then be easily detected from across the room by an admirer of their work. I'm Michelle Levan, the artist, coming to you from the artprintexpress.com studio. This week, I had the opportunity to visit with a longtime artist friend, Stan Metzger, in his studio near his home, and as we talked, the subject of the artist's voice naturally came up. Stan can best be described as being a master painter of tranquility, and as we talked, I discovered that he explains the idea of an artist's voice in a way that is a little more modern, and I think he makes it easy for people to understand the idea in what he calls the artist's DNA in their painting.
Every artist has what I call a DNA in his work or her work. Fortunately, I'm blessed with the fact that I'm self-taught, and as a result of that, everything in my work is my own DNA. I'm not copying anyone else's, and no one has taught me to paint the way they did. I also have the rather rare ability, I thought everyone could do it, all artists could do this, but I have the rare ability to paint from memory and from my imagination. This also adds to my DNA. I can't take much credit for that. I can't take any more credit for that than I can for having been born with brown eyes. I just have to use it properly. My DNA comes from a sense that in my own mind I have a pretty good idea of what a painting should look like. So over the last 8.5 years or so I have been working very hard to match what I think that painting should look like. Every work I do, I try to do the best I can to outdo the last one. So I want every painting I do to be better than those before it. I'm getting to a point where that's getting more and more difficult because I can't quantify what makes it better. It's been an out-of-body experience anyway, so I just kind of let it take care of itself and not worry about it too much. My work is probably best described as high definition. Some people, when they look at it, think it's hyper-realistic. I haven't chosen to go that direction, but it still works that way because of the colors I choose, the light and dark that I use, and the size of my brushes. I use small brushes. I use a layering technique that I learned from just trial and error. I don't know if anyone else in the world paints that way, but my paintings have at least 4 layers of paint on the landscape portion, and I may have as many as 7 or 8 layers in the sky. When you look at my work, in order to understand how I paint, you've got to get your nose right up to the canvas. Obviously, most of us don't do that. So some people may walk away with a misconception of how I paint. I just paint the way I think it ought to look, the way I think it ought to be painted. I paint them for me, and if someone else enjoys it, that's just fine. My paintings, to me, I want to have them to be intimate. What I mean by that is I want to know where my feet are on the ground. I don't want to feel like I'm hovering over the landscape. You can learn a lot about your surroundings by seeing something that's as close as 9 feet away from your feet. So that's typically where I start. I learned all this by taking my camera and laying out a grid on the floor to find out, what's realistic, what's real. I mean, when you paint a painting, it should match what you see when you're naturally standing there. The frame is just something we put around it, but the frame determines, and the size of the painting determines how close to your eye the window is of what you're looking at. So I'll have 1/3 of a sky. The top third is a sky. The bottom 2/3 would be the landscape itself, but I can get as close as 9 feet away from my own feet. So I can see what's coming out of the ground. I can see what the dirt's like. Is it sandy? Is it arid? And all these things. It helps put you there. For several years, I was in an art fair in southwestern Michigan, in St. Joe, Michigan. It was called the Krasel Art Fair. Over 70,000 people every year would come through that fair, and one in particular would come every year. He stopped by my booth the first year, and he kind of slipped up behind me, like I think I was sitting in this very chair, and he slipped up behind me, and the next thing I knew, I heard a voice saying, "Yeah, Mr. Excitement, huh?" And I thought, what does that mean? And he then broke into a smile as I turned to look at him, and he said, "Your work is so tranquil." He said, "I think every returning veteran from the war theater ought to be able to look at your work to just help calm them down." And you know, I got to thinking, I haven't purposely tried to make my work tranquil, but I've had so many people say the same thing. The DNA of a painting is not only how you apply paint, but it's the kind of mood that you get from it. Tranquility, to me, is an emotion, every bit as much so as anger or angst or whatever. You know, if an artist is trying to evoke some kind of an emotion out of you, I'm trying to evoke an emotion in me. And I think between my personality and my surroundings as I do the work, it just naturally comes out as tranquility.
Wow, I agree that Stan reflects tranquility in every piece that he paints. And his idea that every artist should strive to reflect their own special qualities, just as our individual DNA makes us unique. I'm always excited to see his newest work because every piece is filled with quiet artitude that only he can convey. During my years of working with art, I have noticed that artwork that is easy on the mind is also refreshing to the soul. And that would define Stan's masterful, tranquil work to a T. It seems that in today's world, we are constantly on the go and stretching our limits, causing more and more stress in our lives. Wouldn't it be nice to fill your spaces with these peaceful and soul-refreshing scenes? You can explore Stan's pieces, which are also available as museum-quality fine art prints on artprintexpress.com. So go there right now and discover your own relaxing, meditative space in his work. And don't forget to share your favorites with all of your friends who may also need a little tranquility in their life. And as always, until next time, may your life be filled with artitude.